All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to Friday Office Hours. My name is Sam Stewart. I'm a Scientific Research Project Manager here at the Data and Research Center, part of the All of Us Research Program. It's a mouthful. And we're very excited to have a few key speakers joining us for Office Hours today to explain more about opportunities for funding. But before we get started, I do have a few announcements that may be interest to you. So first, the program is seeking input on data streams to link to the researcher workbench through CLAD, or the Center for Language and Acquisition of Data. So you all, as users of the researcher workbench, we really want feedback from you. So feel free to scan the QR code or go to the announcement link to learn more and how you can provide that feedback. We would like that feedback by June 28th, so in a couple of weeks. If you have any questions about this, please email us at support@researcallofus.org, and we'll connect you to the appropriate point of contact within our program. We are also very excited to announce that the All by All tables are live in the Researcher Workbench in the controlled tier only at this time. So the All by All tables are Hail tables or Hail matrix tables that we have utilized to basically look at phenotypic data and genomic data. So if you are interested, we do have an article on our user support hub that you can scan the QR code and learn more. Coming soon is a featured workspace, and we're going to hopefully have a list of the phenotype data information that we used as well for quick reference. I've gotten that question a lot, so we'll get that information to you all in the coming weeks. And in case you missed it, or you're saying, what is All by All? Please feel free to see this recording of our All by All overview with one of our team members who described the pipeline for creating the All by All tables, more about how to access them in the researcher workbench, and just general information of that new data type. So I'll give you guys a second if you want to scan the QR code.
Are we going to be able to get a copy of these slides too?
Yes, I will have this information posted on the user support hub.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, I am going to now introduce our speakers, who I'm very excited to announce. So first, I'm going to start with Dr. Stephen Mockrin. He is a senior scientific advisor providing leadership and strategic advice on ways the All of Us research program can establish priorities for future versions of the data and sample collection, and for developing and implementing a plan to collaborate with the NIH Institutes and Center. So prior to joining All of Us, he worked in the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute for 38 years, retiring as a senior executive leader with diverse background in basic clinical, translational science, program development and management, and extramural administration. He is a wealth of knowledge and has experience in developing, implementing, and managing large, diverse, multidisciplinary scientific programs and projects. And then I would love to introduce Margaret Farrell as well, who I thoroughly enjoy working with. She is the Science Communications Team Lead at the NIH All of Us Research Program and works within the Division of Communication. And so her and Stephen have a great relationship, and she is quick to tell you that she has the best job at All of Us, and I would agree. She has a really wonderful job at AOU. She leads the team that basically helps tell the story about how our data set contributes to Precision Medicine Initiative, and all the information that's been contributed by our participants and how it's available in our platform. So, and occasionally she invites Stephen along with her for fun activities such as today. So I am going to pass it along to them.
Thanks, Sam. I'm going to start off. Let me say that one of the reasons Margaret does have one of the best jobs at NIH is she gets to work with me. And
you'll soon see why.
I'm a Margaret fan. She's absolutely phenomenal person to work with. So to get started, I'm quite confident that all of us on this call understand and appreciate the value of the data that are already collected by the All of Us research program. So we don't have to go into why it's such a great program and future data collections or whatnot. If you want to achieve research objectives, it's kind of like driving to a destination. You need fuel to get there. And so for the car, you need gas or electricity. For research objectives, you need money. So the goal of our presentation is to give you a better sense of how to obtain grant support from NIH to analyze all of us data and how to better navigate NIH. I don't know if that's the first time NIH has been compared to a gasoline station or a service station, but it's not a bad analogy. Can we have the next slide, please? And the next one. All right, so just I imagine that there's different levels of knowledge about NIH and how it operates. I'm going to talk at a very fundamental level. So just recall that there are three basic funding categories that NIH uses to fund research. So we're going to focus on the grants, which is an assistance mechanism. It's a wide variety of research-related programs, and the way you understand one grant from another, the differentiators, are the activity codes. A lot of times they're called mechanisms. Grant mechanisms and activity codes are used interchangeably. So you all know the R1, and I could just rattle off through the alphabet, but if you want to see what they all are and what they all do, you can use your search engine, Dr. Google or any that's your favorite, and just search for, activity codes NIH, and you'll get to this website here. Contracts are legally binding agreements that the goods and services are for the direct use or benefit of the government. It works in a very different way than grants. And then there's other transactions. I love the definition. It's a legal instrument other than contracts or grants. That leaves a lot. So it's basically a delightful combination of what you can do with a contract and what you can do with a grant, and combines the best of both, gives the government a tremendous amount of flexibility and to redefine scope, to rebudget among different awards and so forth. Most of the awardees to establish and recruit and curate data are funded through OT awards, but we're going to look at grants. All right, next slide, please. So two basic types, and it's important to understand the distinction between the two. So there's the NIH parent announcements. These are broad funding opportunities for investigator-initiated, or otherwise known as unsolicited grant applications. And they're not for research areas, they're for activity codes. If you want to submit an R01, you use the NIH parent announcement. This is done for technical reasons, and I'll hit this a little bit later, but when you submit a grant application, you have to put in the funding announcement number. So this gives you a number for submitting your R01. The other category, and if you want to see what they are, again, there's a website that lists all the various NIH parent announcements for all the for the activity codes, as well as which institutes and centers participate in parent announcements. Not all of them do. Again, I'll get to that a little bit later. Then there's institute and center funding opportunities. These aren't for grant mechanisms or activity codes. They're for research areas. They're for their research priorities. They want to stimulate. They want to catalyze. They want to force collaborations. There's a whole bunch of reasons. They have to use a grant mechanism to fund the support, but that's to serve the research areas. Okay, next slide, please. Where are these parent announcements and IC funding announcements? They're all in the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts. You just type in your search engine, NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts, and it'll pop up. As I mentioned before, if you want to submit an application, you need that number that's associated with that announcement. This is a very powerful website. Everything is there. And you can search and filter by the IC, the activity code. What type of funding opportunity is it? Are you looking for all active opportunities and notices? Are you looking for just active funding opportunities? Are you looking for all notices? Are you looking for expired funding opportunities? It's all there. And you can narrow it down and tunnel down. There are, I looked at it today, for this year, through May 31st, there are 270 IC funding opportunities that have been released. That's a large number. And that's not all the active ones, because some funding opportunities are active for more than 1 year. So I didn't look for those. I just looked for the ones that were released. So needless to say, there are a large number of these, and you'll see why we've done some of what we've done. Next slide, please. So these come in different different flavors. So there's a notice of special interest, there's a program announcement. And it can get complicated pretty quickly, but basically a program announcement's just saying, and I see saying, this is an area that we find really important. We hope you submit a grant application. But there's nothing special. There's no program, there's no money set aside for the competition, and there's no special pay line for it. It's just something that, oh, they see it's got that number on it when it's going to the funding to determine if it gets funded or not. They can say, well, maybe we want to raise it to pay if it's beyond the normal pay line. Program announcement with review says, well, not only are we interested, but we have special review criteria for these applications, or we're going to set up a special review group. I'm going to jump across the PAS. Then there's a request for applications. That's really a nice one because the IC has put aside money. And so, assuming that the budget for that fiscal year for the first year of funding comes through okay, and you have a meritorious application, you have a good chance of getting funded. A program announcement with a set aside is a program announcement with a set aside amount of dollars. To this day, I do not understand why NIH doesn't just say RFA, but they do that. Then there's parent announcements, and we already talked about that. So next slide, please. Now, why would an institute or center want to put out a special funding opportunity? Why not just stick with program announcements? Well, it could be that the area is not sufficiently studied, it's underrepresented. It could be that it's of such scope or magnitude in such a way that only NIH has the capacity to fund it. It could be they need a special structure. For example, NIH established a genotyping service to provide low-cost genotyping to awardees. Maybe you need coordination and collaboration that's difficult to achieve. Like there could be communities don't normally work together. So you put out a funding announcement and you say, you got to work together. And then sometimes certain areas of science, especially nascent areas, don't do well in standing Center for Scientific Review study sections. So you set up a special study section. Even today, data science generally does not do that well, at least I'm told, in standing CSR study sections. Next slide, please. All right. What are some of the advantages that you as an applicant may have for searching out for some of these IC funding opportunities? That may is underlined because they're very, each one is different, okay? So the IC set aside dollars, we already talked about that. The IC may give it special funding consideration, and you may also wind up with tailored peer review. So for an RFA, for example, the study section is put together after the applications are received. It's not like you have a standing study section, members already there, and you go on the SRO says, I don't have any expertise in this area on the study section, I'll bring an ad hoc reviewer in. No, everybody is ad hoc in the sense that it's tailored for the applications just for that round of review. And the members get oriented to the program's goals. We put out an NIH-wide announcement for R03s and R21s, and we oriented the peer reviewers, and they got to ask questions. What are the goals? Why are you doing this? And questions about the database and so forth. Now, when we get to Margaret's part, she's going to talk about how all of us curates these to make your life a little bit easier in finding them. Next slide, please. And here she is. This is you, Margaret.
Great. And thanks, Steve. And I'll let you catch your breath for just a minute. And really what Steve hopefully is building up to is this idea that part of our job broadly at NIH is to really stimulate research and to make available resources so that you can find funding for the work that you want to do, and specifically for work that NIH would rather that you do as well. And there's countless resources, and Steve's going to walk through some key ones to really sort of help you in thinking about putting together a grant and responding to a funding opportunity. But the other thing that you have to know about the National Institutes of Health is that we are organized around disease areas for the greater part of it. So I spent decades at the National Cancer Institute. So it was always pretty easy for when we would do trainings for researchers to send them to the guide and have them pop in cancer as their search term, and then pull up the different funding opportunities that it would at least begin to kind of cull that large directory of funding opportunities within the guide. But because all of us is disease agnostic, if you will, that, the data and the tools are set up to drive research, not just across a number of different disease categories, but really across as well. It's more difficult, in my opinion, Steve's opinion, to really just go into the guide and figure out what makes the most sense. So this project that Steve's been spearheading and I've been trying to support is this curation of funding opportunities, if you will, that Steve and I and a robust team at NIH pull out those, we curate, if you will, those funding opportunities that really are responsive for all of us data and tools, and we try to provide them within like a curated setting. So this would be where you'd start at allofus.nih.gov. And if you go to the next slide, Sam. And then we have 2 pages. We have this landing page, if you will, which has like the program funding opportunities. Many of them are that other transaction awards that Steve noted, these big awards that really kind of give the program the flexibility that it needs. And next slide. And then within that page, we have this child page, if you will, of our NIH funding opportunities. And while I'm paddling on, you can scan this QR code and we'll make these slides available. But these are the funding opportunities. This is our curated list directly from the guide that we're pulling out those opportunities that we think through our formula that our data and tools are most responsive for. So to kind of give you a peek behind the curtain. So you can search here, you can look by release date and organization. So if you're interested in funding from the National Cancer Institute, for example, you can filter by that organization. You can also look by the different activity codes. So you can kind of have a sense of like what kind or what size of a funding opportunity is available. We also toss in occasional training awards or K awards that can help support researchers that seem to really be tied directly to our data and tools. How we go about developing these is mostly twofold. There's we go through, we look for our keyword is secondary data analysis, because in many cases, this is the kind of research in NIH's mind that's done with the All of Us data and tools. And thanks to work that Steve is standing up with his division, is we are proactively providing drop-in language for institutes and centers so that when they have a funding opportunity that's coming available, that would benefit from looking across large data sets, whether it's genomic data or EHRs or social and demographic data, that just the richness of all of us, that there's drop-in language that specifically calls out all of us. So if you can go to the NIH guide and look at announcements that call out all of us. And like right now, it won't be a very fruitful search, but over time, we really think that this is going to help the conversation, really sort of drive more researchers and drive more research to all of us, and also help you find the funding more easily. Next slide. So here is our the quick link, again, that QR code. Next slide. And just another plug for the work that we're doing at NIH to really kind of shine a light on opportunities for researchers, as well as guidance that's going to continue to come out about the program. So we're building out these resources on the .gov site, so you can continue to come here and find guidance about new data and the tools that are coming out. Next slide. And I think this might be my last one. And then a shameless plug, but not so shameless, right? For the newsletter that we provide with the subscription link here. Right now it's bi-monthly, and later in the summer we're going to start amping it up monthly to really kind of give really in recognition, right? As Sam and Anna showed at the beginning of the program, the number of announcements, really like like all of the work that's coming out of the program to really reach researchers directly. So if you're not already a subscriber, I'd encourage you that this is the best way, in addition to the website, to stay in touch with the program. Next slide. This might be back to you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to go through some possibilities here that are specific, as opposed to, you know, an IC funding opportunity per se or something like that. So this is a parent announcement that all of us has joined. It's for research supplements to promote diversity in health-related research. So it's an administrative supplement. You have to already have an NIH grant. The work has to be within you bring on a diversity candidate to receive training and do research, but it has to be within the scope of research of your already awarded grant. Can I have the next slide, please? And then I haven't touched upon the Research Training and Career Development Awards. I mean, not only does NIH put out the support the research, but it also supports the development of the workforce that does the research. And it supports all the way from undergraduate through established investigator. And I have highlighted here in red probably the areas that are most relevant to the group on this call. So graduate to early career. And you can see what grant mechanisms are used. Like if you look on even undergraduate at T32s, the T's are institutional awards. The others are for individuals. The F's are for fellowships. The DP is director's program. So that comes out of the the NIH director's office. And then in the postdoctoral, you get into the career development awards, the Ks, and so forth. Now, the requirements, the eligibilities really get sometimes to be almost Byzantine. And each IC has staff who specialize in research training and career development. And there's also, by the way, there's a workforce development office for all of NIH. They have terrific website and resources, and the ICs do as well. But my point here is that there is a website that lists for each institute who their staff are that deal with research and career development. And these people are very, very, very helpful in helping you navigate for what stage of career you're at, what could be the most useful mechanism for you to use. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the NIH STRIDES Initiative. It's supported by the Center for Information Technology. It's here because, if next slide, please, you may be able to get a discount on the on using the Workbench. It's got a much broader purpose. They want to simplify access to cloud service providers. So it's that's offered through Amazon, Google Cloud, and Microsoft. I believe it's Google Cloud that supports the All of Us research program. But simplify access, reduce costs, lower barriers, improve processes. Next slide, please. And then they also do startup support, code management, and training. But I put in red here, red is orange here, that the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is that you may be able to get reduced costs for the cloud services. Next slide, please. And then I just put together some websites and some email addresses that you may find helpful. I mean, basically, what you wind up with is with a STRIDES account, and it's a cloud service provider billing account number, and it's linked to NIH's pre-negotiated rates for the cloud service provider, and that's how you wind up with a discount. You can ask me and Margaret any questions about this, but our answers will be the same. As that's about all we know. But the STRIDES people are very helpful, and actually they put these slides together for us. Next one, please. All right, we can skip through this next. This is just a summary slide. All right, so I'm going to sum up with 3 points. All right, the first one is when you reply to an IC funding opportunity, there's always a scientific contact listed. It's really important that you contact that person and you interact with that person and learn as much as you can about the program that you are applying to, the funding opportunity. I said it before, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to go into some more. That one of the things that grabs me about NIH is there's all these different institutes and centers, and they all do the same thing in different ways. I mean, let's say you're funded by the Diabetes Institute, and then you send in an application and you're funded by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and then you find out they do things completely differently than what the Diabetes Institute does. So you really need to talk to that scientific content. When you do have a good draft of your specific aims, hopefully there's somebody who's experienced and is already well funded or has been funded by NIH who can review those aims. And you can share those with the scientific content, and that person isn't going to help you write them or anything, but can guide you in terms of, oh, that is so responsive, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. Or, oh, maybe you're better off going in for the paired analysis. Or, I'm not kidding here, they may say, you know what, there's another funding opportunity that I think this is going to be much more responsive. And they'll key into that. So get them on the phone, have a call, have a Zoom call, whatever. It's worth your time. Then, NIH is not the only funder of research. And I just point out 3 disease-specific funding sources. There are others that aren't disease-specific, but the AHA, the American Cancer Society, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and so forth. And then last slide, the final point is about understanding and navigating NIH. Know your program officer. This person goes by scientific content on the funding opportunity. Could be called a project officer, a health scientist administrator, an HSA, a medical officer, a program director. They're all the same. They're all program officers. And It's NIH. Here's the NIH, which is what most people understand. It's a nice black box. And on the left-hand side, in comes your application. And on the right-hand side, out comes a decision. Yes, you're funded. No, you're not funded. But as you know, there's got to be a lot more to it. So first of all, why does NIH have program officers? And recall that when you submit a grant application, there's a receipt and referral officer that makes two very important decisions about it. The first is, where is it going to get peer review? Is it going to go to a standing study section in the Center for Scientific Review? If so, which one? The second decision is, which institute is going to manage this and oversee it and fund it if it has the funds? There are areas of shared interest among the different ICs. And so it could go to heart lung. Maybe it could have gone to allergy infectious diseases. If it's an asthma, for example, both support asthma research. Then it goes to the IC, gets it, and they assign a program officer to that grant application before it's even peer reviewed. Now, it goes for scientific and technical merit by your peers at that study section, gets a priority score, gets percentile, goes to council, funding decision is recommended, and then maybe it's funded or maybe it's not funded. But let's say it's a great day, you get a grant application, it's funded, you now have an award. Now 1 year has gone by and NIH requires an assessment of progress. How well, are you achieving your aims? Are you running into problems? Are you staying within the original scope? It does not go back to the standing study section for scientific and technical review. It goes to the program officer. That's what the program officer does. Every non-competing renewal, they take a look at your level of progress and make a decision and whether or not to continue funding of that award. That's why they're hired. There's two reasons. The second reason is they're responsible for an area of research, an area of science, for pushing back the frontiers of medicine and making progress. So they're always looking, well, what are the gaps in this area? What needs stimulation? What needs facilitation? Is there emerging technology that's not being used that can be greatly beneficial? And they're the ones that will put together a workshop or working group, come up with recommendations, develop an initiative, which will eventually become a funding opportunity, and that person will be listed as the scientific contact. And that's what a project officer does. And this is somebody you really want to know, because all ICs do the same thing differently. And this person knows how his IC works or her IC works, or maybe, and some of the others do. I mean, some institutes and centers fund unsolicited grant applications. Most of them will just fund them in straight percentile order. Some use a zone of consideration and don't go by priority score percentile. Others use a hybrid approach. Some use select pay. Well, what's select pay? Select or special pay. It's a spec for grant applications that were close to the pay line, but didn't quite make it. There are a whole set of criteria that say, at the end of the year, if we have some money left over, let's pay from this pot. And you can ask your program person, do you do select pay? Not all institutes publish this on their funding and operating guidelines website. That's something else you want to do. In your search engine, if you're put in the institute name and funding guidelines, and they all post what their policies for how they're funding different grant mechanisms and activity codes. So, hey, what are the criteria for select pay? Does my qualify for select pay? Some institutes have a bridge award, participate in a bridge award program for people. Let's say you have a grant that's been funded, you put in a competing renewal, and it didn't quite make the funding, and they think if you revise it and put it in again, it will, then they can fund that bridge. So do they support that program? I could go on and on and on and on. And they can offer, not just with grants, they can also give you guidance throughout your career. If you called me and said, Steve, I've been invited to serve on the study section, on the CSR standing study section. What do you think? And then my first question, and he said, I want to pay back. You know, I get an award. I want to serve in these study sections, and it's community service. Well, that's great. Where do your grant applications go? What study section when you submit an application? Oh, they go to the XYZ study section. That's the one they want me to serve on. Well, okay, let's think about that. If your applications go to the XYZ study section and you serve on them, they can't go to XYZ study section. You're in conflict. Do you have any grant applications that'll be going there soon? Are you planning on submitting any that would go there? Because if you do get on that study section and that application comes in, it's going to go to an ad hoc study section, not a standing study section. It has no voting history. It cannot be percentile. Remember, most institutes fund in percentile score order. They will percentile it against the funding behavior of all study sections. It's an artificial percentile. It's meaningless, but that's what they do. So my advice to you is go to the ABC study section. Don't serve on XYZ. Again, it never hurts to call the program person. These are very, very helpful people. And I think if you go to the next slide, I think that's my last slide. Yep. It's time to stop talking and give you folks a chance to ask any questions. Please direct them all to Margaret.